Vivica, we got Jeff on the line here. What do you want to ask him?
What guidance can you offer in terms of building relationships with brokers while you are still building credibility as a multifamily investor without assets and an SCRO?
Well, first of all, in order to get the broker relationship, you have to have a relationship. Getting to know them and finding something that you have in common, that's always a good way to do it. If you could find out what they have in common, so whatever it happens to be, you want to try to find some hook that you can communicate with them other than just saying, what do you have for me?
Hey, I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different from everything else out there. I bring together new and aspiring investors on each and every episode and let the aspiring investors ask the questions that they need answered. And if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably have the same questions. So before you get to this episode that we have prepared for you, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that little notification bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe, and I'm very excited for today's show. We've got some really, really great people on the line with us. Somebody that I met a long, long time ago as our experienced investor, Jeff Greenberg, who incidentally came on the podcast about a year and a half ago on episode 163, so second appearance, and somebody I met for the first time yesterday, Vivica Rojo. So welcome, guys, and thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you
Yes.
for having both of us.
Yes. Thank you, Brian. Excited to be here.
All right. And we're going to have a little bit of fun today. So get ready. And as is tradition, experienced investors up first. So Jeff, do us a favor. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. I actually got into real estate about 2007, commercial real estate about a little bit later, about 2008, bought my first property in 2010.
Mhm.
So it took us a little while before we got that first property. And then for the past, 12, almost 13
Dozen
years
years,
now, I've been doing commercial real estates, all of them syndications. I've had several partners and brought in different people, but mainly Texas, Ohio, Georgia, and Arizona.
Okay. Now, a couple questions there. I mean, 2007, 2008 is when you started. Wow. Great times to start. How, just real quick, I mean, it looks like we're going into a recession right now, or things are a little bit shaky. Any big lessons learned from, 2007 to 2008 to what we're seeing now, or any comparisons you'd like to make?
Well, the one thing was that I remember my mentor was telling us, don't buy anything that's not an 8 cap and a 1.6 debt coverage ratio and a 16% cash on cash return.
Yeah,
and that's
wow.
probably why it took us 2 years to find a deal, because those weren't around then.
Yeah.
and
1.6. Wow.
you're not seeing those now either.
No.
But so that was one of the things. And I put a lot of importance on cap rate. And one of the things I've learned is cap rate is one metrics that we use when looking at deals, but it's only one metrics. It's not the end all.
Yep. Yeah. Well, interesting. Yeah. So you started in 2008 as far as commercial, closed on your first in 2010. And I don't think lots changed. It takes a lot of people a couple of years, but I mean, 2008 to 2010, there was very, very shaky lending environment, a lot of interesting stuff going on. So interesting. So 1.6 DSCR, that kind of blows my mind still. But so how have things progressed since your first property? What did that first property look like? And what did the next 12 years look like as far as the progression?
Well, the first property was a pretty small one. It was actually 5 fourplexes. We treated it as a 20-unit property. We did syndicate it, and we did raise money for it, which was scary as hell. We raised $350,000 for that, and that was an immense amount of money for the two of us. It was a great property. The problem was there was really no value add, because the property was built in 2007. So it was a 3-year-old property. They were 100% occupied. The people were already paying electricity. And we're sitting there, okay, we're going to raise rents and we're going to charge for water. And they fought the water charges, and raising rent was really slow. And so now we had a property that was cash flowing, but we weren't going to get any quick value adds on it. And so that was a big lesson we learned there, is to make sure there's some value that you could add to a property to increase its value.
Yeah.
And yeah, that one we held on to for about 6 years.
Now, did you hold on to it because you had to hold on to it, or what was the idea on that one?
Well, the original plan was to hold on to it for 5 years.
Okay.
And so at year 4.5, we started selling it.
Mhm.
And we kind of drew a line in the sand on what price we were going to sell it at.
Mhm.
It took us till year 6. And that's mainly because the broker costs were going to eat up most of the profit that we had made.
Mhm.
So most of the increase in the value. And so we wanted our investors to get a little bit more money.
Mhm.
And we said, okay, this is where we're going to go. And we had to extend our loan. The lender extended our loan for a year
Mhm.
in order for us to get more for our investors. I mean, it was a good investment. The investors got more than they would have if they were in the bank and probably in the stock market.
Mhm.
But, we made very little money on it.
Yeah.
It was a seminar for us. We spent 6 years learning things,
Mhm.
but there was a lot of lessons in there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a fantastic deal, but we did learn.
Our first deal, we're selling it right now, and it's one of those things where I'll probably make 0 pennies because we elected to push all the profits towards the investors, because same thing for us. I think that's sadly the case in a lot of first investments. Is it's more of a seminar for the operators, but yeah, that happens a lot. But so 20plex, you say it cash flowed from the beginning, 6-year hold, and you held out for that 6 year just to make sure you could maximize your investors' return, which I think is a great idea. Love the idea on that one. How did it progress from there? So that was your first deal. How did you guys scale from there, and how did you go from there?
The next one was pretty much a home run where we got an off-market deal. This was in Houston. My broker actually did a cold call on a property, actually met the owner of that property. It was 150 units, but they didn't want to sell that one. But they said, oh, hey, we have this other one that's a 60-unit property. And so they went to that one. My broker called me up. Here we are talking broker relationships.
Yep.
He called me, of all the people he knew, he called me and said, hey, you've got to get into this deal. He gave me the numbers, and within a day we had a purchase and sale agreement that was signed and bought that property in Houston. And we paid under $21,000 a door. So you can imagine in today's market what that is worth.
Yeah. A lot of questions that pop up there. And the first one that I'll ask is, you mentioned broker relationships. Why do you think that broker called you instead of anybody else in his Rolodex?
I haven't figured that one out yet,
Mhm.
except that we had a California connection.
Mhm.
He was born in San Jose, California, and relocated out to McAllen, Texas.
Okay.
And he was branching out to Houston.
Mhm.
And we had spent a lot of time trying to find properties in McAllen. In
Mhm.
fact, he was the broker I bought the 20 unit from. So
Mhm.
this was our second deal together. But he had other people that could have come in more quickly and
Mhm.
bought the property. He had people that could have come in for all cash. In
Yep.
fact, he made a bunch of enemies by him bringing it to me. So I don't know. He liked me. We had a relationship. We had spent a lot of time together. We partied in San Antonio together when we bought the first property.
Mhm.
And so we had this bond.
Yeah.
It could also be that I had some pictures on him, so that maybe he was afraid I was going to reveal, but
Could have been that party,
yeah. So we did have a relationship, and he called me, and I was shocked, and it was a
Yeah.
phenomenal deal. And as I said, some of the other people were very upset that he didn't call them first.
Yeah.
So yes, broker relationships, finding commonalities. Now, anytime I'm down in that area, I spend time at his place. I actually stay at his house. So that's the kind of relationship that we ended up establishing.
Yeah. And that's broker relationships to the next level. And that's I think the goal of everybody who's like an acquisitions guy is to be the first call, or among that first series of calls from a broker when they get the listing, or even before they get the listing at times. And I think that's kind of like the holy grail of acquisitions right there. And you were able to do it. The other thing I'll point out is something that one of my mentors, Michael Blanc, talked about a lot, is the law of the first deal, where once you get that first property, you tend to get those calls instead of reaching out to brokers. But a lot of goodness there. So broker relationships really help, so McAllen, Texas, is that where the first 2 properties were at?
No, the first one, it was supposed to be McAllen, Texas, but
Mhm.
we ended up in Harlingen, which is
Okay.
about 35 miles from McAllen, Texas. I
All right.
wanted to get into McAllen
Mhm.
because it was a much better market, but I figured that Harlingen was a door to get my foot in the door in the valley down there. But Harlingen is a slow growth market and it's closer to Brownsville. But we got that one because we figured maybe that will get us closer to getting something in McAllen. Never did get anything in McAllen though.
Yeah. So something that you mentioned that I think a lot of people will do is to get in the game. There's a lot more competition in the really shiny markets,
Mhm.
and your Houstons, your Dallases right now. I don't know what it was like 10 years ago, but Houston and Dallas and Atlanta and Phoenix, and some of your North Carolina, your Charlottes, right now are kind of the belle of the ball. And it's extremely competitive. And so what you did is you went to Harlingen. It's not McAllen, which is a big border town, one of the largest border crossings in the nation, in the world, actually, but a little bit removed from there. But you said it was easier to buy stuff there. And you did that to kind of get your foot in the door, so to speak. And I think that's a smart strategy for a lot of people is, get your foot in the door. And sometimes that means, going a little bit out into the fringes. But was that something intentional, or is that something looking back that you said, hey, it ended up working that way?
I mean, we wanted to get into McAllen because I did like McAllen,
Mhm.
but it got us comfortable with the whole process. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't have changed a thing. It got us comfortable dealing with all the issues with any kind of investment, as well as raising money and understanding what our capabilities are.
Yeah.
So it was a great process to learn. I would hate to calculate how much we were getting paid an hour for what we did on that process. But hey, I can't put a dollar amount on the education.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for people who are geographically challenged, I just Googled it. You got two big border crossings in Southeast Texas. One's McAllen, one's Brownsville, and Harlingen's right in between the two. So you probably get a lot of the economic activity from the other two cities, but it's not quite as nice of a place to be from the investment standpoint. But
Once SpaceX decides to start having manned launches,
Mhm.
that area may become very popular because it's only probably about 35 miles from Brownsville, and that SpaceX site
Mhm.
is in Brownsville or down from Brownsville.
Interesting.
And that was one of the things when we were selling in 2016, they were supposed to start manned space launches.
Mhm.
And we were thinking, okay, come on, start getting these launches going because that
Yeah.
would help our property values. And I don't know that they've done a manned launch yet.
Mhm.
Here we are in 2022. But
Yeah.
eventually they will start launches, which was supposed to bring about 10,000 people a month in
Mhm.
there to watch those launches,
Yeah.
which would be great for the values around that area and the development of
Mhm.
that area.
Yeah.
But that hasn't happened yet.
All right. Yeah, that's one thing, track what's coming in, but I would take a lot of things with a grain of salt. I think when you're looking at incoming technologies, it's good to know where the hot spots are, what's coming in, but there's always a little bit of risk in that because, things may not develop as fast as people like them is something that I've learned a lot. But
Yeah, I
well,
mean, it was still cash flowing. It just
Mhm.
didn't give us the value add that we
Yeah.
would hope for. We were down the street from a hospital, and that was one of the big selling points as well. You could throw a rock to this great hospital, actually a teaching hospital. So
Mhm.
we did get a lot of interns
Yeah.
coming in, and it was a great property. It's just very slow growth market.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that. Very much appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit more about you a little bit. And so something I like to ask everybody is kind of about their motivation. It's what I call the big burning why. So what would you say your big burning why is?
Well, initially I was in the middle of a divorce,
Mhm.
and my retirement wasn't going to be substantial enough to keep me going.
Mhm.
My ex-wife and I split the house. Well, she got the house. I got a little bit out of it,
Mhm.
but I decided, okay, what do I need to do to boost up my retirement? And then once I saw that I was on the path for that, it also became, what am I going to leave as a legacy to my
Mhm.
children, my adult children, and mainly my grandchildren? I would like to leave something for them. And so they're more of my motivation now is, what can I do as far as leave education? Because I'm always talking about what I'm doing, but also, leave some money for them for college
Yeah.
or to help buy their first house or whatever that I didn't get. Nobody left me anything. So
Yeah.
I would like to leave something for them. And so that's
Mhm.
pretty much my why at this point.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. When I was growing up, and it's the same thing. You like to give your kids what you didn't have. I remember one year I was in my teens. My parents had to replace the sewer line from the house to the street, and my dad at one point took me outside, pointed to the big, long hole in the ground, and said, "That's your college fund right there."
Oh,
But
how sad.
that was it. It's like, that's your college fund right there. So sorry, but anyway, yeah, I think that happens a lot. A lot of people look at, what they have or didn't have and want to always give their kids and their grandkids a better situation. And
Well, this last weekend, my one granddaughter wanted to have a white Christmas.
Mhm.
And so I took my daughter and my granddaughter, we went to Yosemite.
Oh, nice.
And I didn't have to worry about paying for the Airbnb. It was okay. It's all there. We'll do that. And then in February, I'm taking the whole family. We're going to Mammoth,
Mhm.
and it's nice to be able to spend some money
Yeah.
and not worry about it.
Yeah.
And say,
Yeah.
okay, I'm paying for the housing. We're going to have a good time together. So it's family time, which
Mhm.
is very important to me, and being able to spend little chunks of money to go and do things with family, or go on trips.
Something that I like reflecting on is from a movie, 90s movie, Forrest Gump, where you got Forrest Gump sitting on that bus bench waiting for the bus to come by. And his comment about money is, someone makes the comment about, must be nice having all that money. And he just said, it's just one less thing. I was like, well, just one less thing. But man, I like how you put that. You didn't have to worry about where the money's coming from. You're going to take your family to Mammoth. You're going to take the kids to Yosemite for the white Christmas. And there's just one less thing to worry about. It's like, I don't have to worry about where the money's coming from because we took care of that years and years ago. So anyway, I appreciate you sharing that. One question for you, and then we'll bring Vivica on. What's next for you?
Well, I'm in the middle of a fund, an equity fund. Basically, it's a diversified, customizable equity fund,
Mhm.
which is a little bit a long term there. But basically, what it means is because investors can pick and choose what assets they want to be in. Okay, normally when you go into a fund, whatever comes into the fund, you're in.
Mhm.
Well, it's a customizable fund where people can pick and choose what they want to be in. So because of that, I could make it very diversified.
Mhm.
I can do multifamily, self-storage. I'm in a short-term rental fund. I'm looking at doing RV parks, doing all kinds of things. And if an investor doesn't like one or the other, they're
Mhm.
not stuck being in it. They can pick and choose. So it could be diversified and it could be customizable, and it's all under one umbrella.
Yeah.
And so I'm very excited about that. I have a 506C, which I've been running for a little while, and I just opened a 506B. So sophisticated investors can also get into it, not just accredited investors. So
Yeah, and
excited about both of those.
I love the format, and we have funds through the same company. We both have similar funds. I love the format of it. I love the customizable aspect of it. There's lots of things about it that I love, but gives you a lot of options, a lot of flexibility, and best of luck as you go forward, growing that fund out. So anyway, real quick change of pace here. We're going to talk to Vivica now. So Vivica, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Excited to be here.
Thank you.
Yes, so my name is Vivica Rojo. I am 24 years old. I'm based out of California. My parents have always been very social justice oriented.
Mhm.
And so that's been kind of like a driving force to my life and my motivations. So when I went to college, I had the privilege and opportunity to go to college. I earned my degree from UC Santa Cruz in 2020 in
Mhm.
critical race and ethnic studies, and I minored in legal studies. And so out of college, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but I did know I wanted to serve the community in some capacity. And so I worked with 18 to 24-year-olds in San Francisco who were experiencing homelessness and the other challenges that come with housing instability. And Then I moved forward to work at a middle school. So I was
Mhm.
running the school's wellness center, and I did a lot of crisis intervention and mental health support, educational support. And during my time in these jobs, I found myself feeling a little bit helpless. So,
Mhm.
like when I was in college, I was like, I'm going to get a job and I'm going to be, helping people and it's going to be great. It's going to be the solution. And, it ended up being more of a stark reality that, like, okay, there's lack of funding and resources to provide the quality services and support and education that is
Mhm.
needed. So I was like, okay, it's time to start thinking bigger. And again, very grateful for my father. I ended up joining or starting in the multifamily real estate space with him. And he had been looking for different investment
Mhm.
opportunities, so, like the stock market and cryptocurrency at first. And then he came up on an opportunity to go to a workshop for
Mhm.
multifamily. And that's kind of all she wrote. Then we
Yeah.
joined into a mentorship starting the very end of July.
Mhm.
And so we established our LLC, Justice Capital, holds a lot of meaning for us. And yeah, just working diligently every day, trying to establish our name,
Yeah.
network. We're more on the acquisitions side of things. So we've been
Mhm.
building out our teams, establishing those relationships with brokers, like you all were talking about
Mhm.
earlier. And yeah, so that's where I am right now.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, looks like you guys I guess saw the light with multifamily and it's like, hey, that's all she wrote. We're all in on this new venture. So I love that it's you and your dad together. I think that's it's a partnership that'll probably last. I see a lot of syndicators, after their first deal kind of split up, but
Mm.
don't think that's going to happen. You guys are have a little more bonding than that. But
Yes,
now
definitely.
Congratulations at your young age to
yeah.
be that aware and that, getting into this phenomenal. I wish that I
Yeah.
had started at your young age. That's phenomenal.
Oh yeah. I
Thank
mean, yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. There's a lot of times, man, if I only had half of your mind at age 24, I wonder what I'd be right now. But anyway, so you talked a lot about, the reasons you do things, social justice, but if you could boil down your big burning why to, a couple of sentences, what would that be?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. So again, I've been blessed with a lot of privilege and opportunity, and I've also seen a lot of suffering around me, in my family and my communities, and I'm tired of it. And I'm not saying so like in the
Mhm.
future, in 5 to 7 years, I want to start my own community-based project. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying that that's going to be the end all be all, like the entire solution, but it does put me in a place where I can help support the community through education, mental health, in capacities that I just can't right now.
Mhm. Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. And that said, my favorite part of the show is coming up right now. Vivica, we got Jeff on the line here. What do you want to ask him?
Hi, Jeff. It's been great to hear your background, and I'm really excited for this portion. Okay, so I have a few questions. The first
Mhm.
one has like a subpart to it, and I tried to provide a little bit of context, so it's a little bit lengthy, and I'm happy to
Mhm.
repeat anything. So, what guidance can you offer in terms of building relationships with brokers while you are still building credibility as a multifamily investor without assets and an SCRO? Because, right, the goal
Mhm.
tends to be like build relationships where you are getting pocket deals, or like you talked about your story with the broker calling you first. And so, what was your experience? I know, again, you talked a little bit about that. And what are some tips you can offer?
Well, first of all, in order to get the broker relationship, you have to have a relationship. Getting to know them and finding something that you have in common. That's always a good way to do it. If you could find out what they have in common. You're
Mhm.
young, maybe they have some young children, or maybe you have some cultural things in common. Or as Brian and I were talking earlier, we had swimming in
Mhm.
common.
Yeah.
Anything that you could find. Maybe you like dogs, maybe you like cats, whatever it happens to be. You want to try to find some hook that you can communicate with them other than just saying, what do you have for me? Do you have a deal? Do you have another offering? Finding some way to, an excuse, I guess, to contact them and say, hey, I saw this great article about something, some common interest that you have, or something that, that you have in common in some way. That's kind of a way to get yourself to stand out.
Yeah. And what Jeff says, if I can put that in a couple words, it's just building relationships. I mean, you start with something, some commonality you have. And I love the answer, Jeff. I mean, you start with something you have in common and you build on that. And you create relationships with the investors. And, looking back at the people who've invested with me, it's typically the people that I've done the best job creating relationships with, and there's a lot of people who have been interested that, maybe I've dropped the ball on the relationship thing that have never invested with me. So yeah, build relationships and start from scratch.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Especially because, and thank you both for sharing, because, we're in the multifamily space. And I think we forget that, like, we're all still human, we all still we have hobbies and interests. And so that's great. Thank you. And then a sub question to that is like, okay, so when you're first reaching out to a broker, what is your take on effectiveness when it comes to phone calls, like a cold call versus like other means of communication, like email or LinkedIn as a sort of intro?
They typically are getting hundreds and hundreds of emails and
Mhm.
a lot of people hitting them up on LinkedIn. Now, the thing is for the most part, they're out there looking for you. They need you as well. So I get brokers calling me all the time, and I got brokers sending things all the time to me, but that's not a very close relationship. I mean, I still have people from Houston when I was really involved in Houston that are saying, hey, I got this new deal, I got this deal or whatever. They're coming after you with deals. You need to go and talk to them. This may be a deal that you're not really interested in if they send you a deal, but you could go and look at that deal, evaluate that deal. And if the deal doesn't fit for whatever reason, maybe it's the not type of property you want, the size that you're ready for, or whatever it may be, or maybe the numbers just don't work. You don't want to just drop the ball. You go back and say, hey, I looked this deal over and this is why it doesn't fit into my criteria. Either the numbers are way off and the returns aren't what I'm looking for, or maybe it's a class C and I'm looking for class B, whatever it is. But have a discussion with them and don't just say, hey, this just doesn't work.
Right.
So you're trying to continue the conversation. You're also trying to show them your intelligence and your knowledge on underwriting and understanding the business. And in the meantime, you're letting them know what you're looking for. You're giving them a better idea of what you're looking for. So always follow up and always do it quickly. And that's something that I know that I failed at a lot of times, where I let something sit because I was busy. But the faster you get back to them, they're going to know that you're on the ball and you're looking at it and you really understand and you have a good reason why you're turning it down. It gives you an excuse to talk to them, and explain to them and let them know that you have knowledge.
Yeah. I love it. But use every opportunity to build the relationship. And I'll talk about a quick story. I mean, when I was early in my investing career, I was our acquisitions guy. I was our deal finder. And I think everybody, Vivica, we actually talked about this yesterday, but I think everybody up front is a deal finder because, you don't have a deal yet. So you don't need an asset manager, or any other things. But I was talking to a broker once, and I remember he gave me a call, and we'd established a relationship. We was able to finally convince somebody that we were serious investors and we were going to be able to close. And I remember him calling me up and asking me very specifically about what my deal criteria was. And I was able to give him a very specific deal criteria. And then what he said at the end of the conversation shocked me. He says, okay, I'm going to get on the phone this week and I'm going to call every owner in this area on every property that meets your deal criteria and see if I can find something for you. Because that's what a lot of times what the brokers do. I mean, if the brokers don't just sit around, wait for deals to come to them, they're also hunters, so they're going out to find the deals and they're going out to make these connections. And so if you're really good at building the relationship, getting back with the brokers, make them understand that you're serious and that you're looking at every property they send, you're much more likely to get that broker that looks at you as a buyer now and says, okay, if I can find something that meets Vivica's criteria, they're going to pull a trigger.
Two things on that, Brian.
Yeah.
One, having a clear criteria gives them an idea of what you want. Don't just say, hey, I want a good deal. because they have no clue what a good deal is for you.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is a lot of times the commercial brokers want both sides of the deal. So maybe in residential, you have a listing broker and a buyer's broker. A lot of times in commercial real estate, they're on both sides of it. So because they want, I don't know if they're greedy or what, but they don't like splitting the pie. They like both sides. So they're going to do, as Brian said, they're going to be calling the owners and getting the listings, but they're also looking for the buyers. So they're looking for both sides. So that's both sides of that relationship you want to, get into.
That's awesome. Thank you both. And I appreciate the strategies, and it's a little bit of validation, because that is what we've been doing, trying to be very responsive and telling them this is why the numbers don't work. This is what we need for our investors in terms of cash on cash, etc. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So my next question, it's a little meaty again. So this relates to fundraising and building your investor base. Regardless whether you see yourself fulfilling the investor relations role, I hear of the importance of your entire team always trying to raise money and get those soft commitments. Aside from branding, building your website, having your business cards, your social media presence, what should individuals be doing on a regular basis to move the needle in this area?
Well, I think Brian started on that with the relationships. We was talking about investors as well as brokers, is meeting a lot of people. Networking is the key. I've been doing networking for years, and 99% of the people that I have as investors, I've met in some kind of networking. Either they saw me on a podcast and contacted me afterwards, or we met at a seminar or a boot camp or something like that. More recently, I've started the social media stuff that I hadn't done in the past. So that's where I just redid my website. And now I have different articles, ebooks that I've written, and I'm passing them out, as far as giving out information for people to get onto my list so I can contact them. But it's also touching them multiple times over and over again with different media. So if you're on social media and you're touching them, with your newsletter, you're touching them, or with announcements, you're touching them. But the more people are touched and they see you a professional, they understand your expertise, then they're starting to build that relationship with you and feel more like they know you. And that's great, because they feel more comfortable with you. And then they'll be more willing to, trust you with their investments.
Yeah. I'll add something else that, as you scale, it becomes harder and harder to keep personal relationships up, and that kind of becomes the difficulty, when you get to that scaling point, you just have to bring in more and more and more investors. And so at some point, you've got to figure out how to automate everything that you can, automate a lot of the menial stuff, so you don't have to keep on redoing it. And one quick example that anyone can do, when I realized that after my investing calls, I was sending an email that said almost the exact same thing to every investor, I wrote down a template. And, this was before I got into CRMs or everything else. But while you're doing that, while you're building the relationships, figure out where you can trim your time down and figure out where you can build efficiencies in there. So like I said, I had a word pad on my desktop that had the templated email that went out to the investor after the first call. And instead of writing the same email over and over again, I wrote it once, cut and pasted in there, and then would edit, and it took that email, writing that email from 10 minutes to 2 minutes, it was cut and paste. And then, hey, it was great talking to you today, Jeff, about blah, 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 blah. And then the rest of the email was pretty standard. But so, yeah, definitely focus on the relationship. But as you scale, you need to also figure out ways to become as efficient as possible. So anyway, I love the position I'm in, where I get to hear, Jeff say, drop some gems, and I can just, spend a little bit of time thinking of, how can I add to that? But I love this podcast, love the hosting thing, but we are pretty much out of time right now. So one last question for each of you and it's how can listeners learn more about you? Jeff, you can go first.
Okay, you could go to my website, synergetic.ig.com. I've got a fabulous new website that I'm really excited about. And you could reach me at jeff@synergetic.ig.com. And also I've got some a free ebook that you can get at sigcre.com/sponsor. And that will get you a free ebook on what to ask deal sponsors if you want to come in as a LP in a deal, what things you need to learn about deal sponsors before you get into a deal.
Awesome. All right. Thanks a lot, Jeff. I appreciate it. And Vivica, same question for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
Yes, thank you. So you are welcome to check out my website as well. It's rojojusticecapital.com, and Rojo is ROJO. And you can also find me on LinkedIn and Vivica Rojo. And then last but not least, feel free to reach out via email. My email is Vivica, VIVICA @rojojusticecapital.com.
Right.
No, that's wordy, but
Yeah, well, we'll put links to everything in the show notes so that it'll make it really, really easy for them to email you or find your guys' websites. They can just hit the show notes, swipe, tap, and that magical internet thing will whisk them away and take them to your website. So thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys both for being on the show today. I had a great time and hope you guys did too.
Yeah, this was fun. Just lots of fun.
definitely enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call the Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.